platform where the public can view the meeting live and watch recordings of previous council meetings. In accordance with the Local Government Act 1993 and Regulation 33, these video-audio files will be retained by council for at least 6 months and made available for viewing live as well as online within 5 days of the scheduled meeting. The written minutes of a meeting, once confirmed, prevail over the audio-video recording of the meeting. Welcome council laws, staff and members of the public. I declare the ordinary meeting of the Glamorgan Spring Bay Council open on this day, the 11th of December 2018 at 5:01. Sadly, Councillor Michael Kent passed away last week. I now call for a moment of silence to pay our respect. Bale Michael. Item 1.1, acknowledgement of country. Sorry. Sorry. The Glamorgan Spring Bay Council acknowledges the traditional owners of our region and recognises their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. 1.2. All councillors are in attendance this evening. In attendance we have Council's Acting General Manager, Mr Wells, and Council's Executive Officer, Ms Turvey. 1.4. I request councillors to indicate whether they have or are likely to have 1. In accordance with Regulation 8 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures, Regulation 2015, a pecuniary interest personally or via a close associate as defined in Section 49 of the Local Government Act 1993, or 2. Any conflict as described in Council's Code of Conduct for councillors in any item on the agenda. 2.1, Ordinary Meeting of Council, November 27th, 2018. Could I have a motion, please?
I'll move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting held Tuesday, 27th of November 2018 be confirmed as a true and correct record.
Is somebody to second that motion, please? Councillor Arnold, thank you. A discussion? Councillor Browning.
On page 26 of the minutes, I just noticed that the Coles Bay Hall Committee, it was left off, and the Tasmanian Seafarers Committee was left off, and the Spring Bay Elder Care Committee was left off.
Councillor Browning, can you go back and tell us who, Coles Bay Hall Committee, who was?
It was Councillor Simons and Councillor Churchill.
And you viewed the video?
Yeah, I watched the video back.
Okay, next one.
Tasmanian Seafarers Committee was Councillor Arnold, and the Spring Bay Elder Care Committee was Councillor Breeny. And also, there was no mention about the thank yous to the councillors who had not stood again, which was came after the Youth Council, I think, on the video recording. There was mention to thank the councillors who hadn't renominated through a letter, and that's not noted in the minutes.
Okay, it wasn't moved as a motion though, was it?
Okay.
Was it?
Yeah.
It was not? I don't
think
was.
so. It was a recommendation, I think. Was it a recommendation?
It was a request that a letter be sent.
All right.
So we'll just make note of that one,
okay,
and ensure that that happens. And I've just got a couple there too. 1.4, the declaration of interest or conflict. I've taken the words provided by the Director of Local Government, which are the words that I read tonight. So if that can be amended, I can send through those words to what I actually said on at that meeting. It's just a slight difference to that, but a bit stronger. And 7.10, that was Swansea Primary School. I watched the back on the video, and Councillor Simons, you were for that.
Yes, that was the grant for their blinds, was it?
And so the decision was 5-3, and Councillor Simons needs to be added into that. So moving back, Deputy Mayor Woods, are you happy with those amendments?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yes, that's fine.
Excuse me, Mayor, could you clarify your last statement regarding 7.1?
Sure. 7.1, it says there the votes were put, it was 4-3, there were 8 of us there that night, and Councillor Simons was missed off the list of being 4.
Okay.
So therefore the vote was 5-3. The decision's still the same, but it's just
Yeah.
What page was that on? Sorry, Debbie?
34.
34.
7.10.
7.10, that's
Not
better.
7.1.
Yeah.
Oh, 7-10.
Sorry. Thank you.
So the mover and the seconder is happy with that. Is that the lot? Yep. And so I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour with the amendments? Against? Carried unanimous. Thank you. Item 2.2, a workshop was held on November 21st, 2018. That was for planning training. Item 2.3 was a workshop held on November 27th. The agenda's there. On that item, according to my records, the in attendance were apologies for that meeting, which was the one directly before the council meeting. Deputy Mayor Jenny Woods, Councillor Cheryl Arnold and Councillor Michael Simons, the first part of that meeting, weren't in attendance and arrived at 4:15.
I didn't come until about 4:20.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. So that needs to be altered for apologies were Deputy Mayor Jenny Woods, Councillor Cheryl Arnold and Councillor Michael Simons. Item 2.4 was a workshop held December the 3rd, 2018. That was in respect to works at the Prosser River mouth, including the construction of a fence. So council notes this information. Under Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures, Regulations 2005, the Chairperson hereby declares that the Council is now acting as a planning authority under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 for Section 3 of the agenda. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Arnold.
I'll move that council now acts as a planning authority.
Somebody will second that, please. Councillor Browning. All those in favour? Carried unanimous. The council now acts as a planning authority at 5:10. Thank you. First item 3.1, it's DA 18239, residential, 2 units, Aquasands Drive, Swanee. The recommendation starts on page 19. And could I have a motion, please?
Thank you. I'll move that pursuant to Section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and the Glamorgan Spring Bay Interim Planning Scheme 2015, that the application for residential multiple dwellings, DA 2018/0239 at Aquasands Drive, Swansea, CT 174799/15 be approved, subject to the following conditions 1 through to 13.
Someone to second that, please? Councillor Arnold. the Planning Authority wish to speak to the motion?
I just have something that
Churchill. You're right.
I just have something that I wanted to raise there. This is the one where there's an issue of some light reduction to the solar panels on the adjacent house. I can see that we don't have any rights there to take that into consideration, but I do feel for the people next door. They were had a DA in a year or so ago to approve their solar panels to go onto their premises, and now it is being overshadowed to some degree, and they might have to, at least it may be a cost to them now to remove those panels to a place where they operate. I'm just wondering whether we can't get something happening through the local provision schedule, I believe would be the appropriate place to start, to address that sort of issue, because it's going to be an ongoing issue, I would think, over time. This isn't the only one of these we're going to see. So is that appropriate for that to be done through the planning department? Would you be able to take that up?
Through the mayor, I can take that issue up. It's probably more of a broader issue than just our LPS.
Yes, correct.
So I can raise that with the relevant people. I'll send them a letter requesting it be looked into.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Any further comment?
Just a question is, I wasn't aware, and we aren't aware, of course, other than in the representation, that the owner had, the person who represented had got approval. I presume it was through a DA, as you say, as Councillor Churchill mentioned. It's disappointing to me that we have a development application situation that requires somebody to comply with the planning scheme. I presume that's why we require a DA. So they're complying with the planning scheme in how they, or whether they ask for approval for their solar panels. And then a year later, when somebody overshadows them, the reply is that the planning scheme does not provide for protection of solar access for solar panels. It's just like palming it off. And if we could do something about that, as has been mentioned, that would go to helping people understand, especially the representor, just what the process is, and they may need to be aware that maybe a condition that says these panels, the location of these panels is purely the responsibility of the owner, or something like that. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimous. Thank you. DA 18246, addition to dwelling 98 Foster Street, Bishano. The recommendation starts on page 31. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Arnold.
Pursuant to section 57 of the Land Use Planning Approvals Act 1993 and Glamorgan Spring Bay Interim Planning Scheme 2015, that the application for the new residence at 98 Foster Street, Bishano, DA 2018/246 be approved, subject to conditions 1 to 7 in the agenda.
Do we have somebody to second that motion? Councillor Breeny. Any discussion? Councillor Breeny.
I'm supporting this motion, but another clarification issue. I did notice it in previous applications, and I've noticed it here, that there are references to statements that are general in relation to things like dimensions, like a small amount or limited, etc. I think we're professional enough to be able to deal with actual numbers. We know what a metre and a half is, or what, etc. For example, on page 31, the photograph that's shown, the proposal under concerns raised by representatives, the proposal fails to provide separation between the dwellings on adjacent sites to provide reasonable opportunity for daylight and sunlight to enter habitable rooms and private open space. The space between existing and proposed residence is approximately 3 metres. On that diagram, it shows arrows and red lines and stuff. I think if the proponent or whoever is preparing these could please be showing dimensions. Some of us understand very carefully what dimensions are and what they mean. And for example, on page 27, under 754, second paragraph, second last line, the location proposed for these two will result in a small section of the garage, small, and some of the second story, how much of the second story, being outside the building envelope. We need to know those things because we're making a discretionary decision on issues that relate to something that isn't dimensioned. I think it's about time we got that sort of information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Frenny. The planner, Acting General Manager, many titles this evening. Would there be any issue with putting that information, that what Councillor Brenny is referring to?
Look, through the Mayor, on the northern elevation of the plans, unmarked page, they do show the approved building envelope and the extent of the garage and the upper level being outside of it. So look, certainly figures can be put on that. The applicant as well, they are required to show the relation to proposed works to the neighbouring buildings, which is what you can see on the site plan as well. It is a little bit difficult for the designers to pick up exactly where the neighbouring houses are, as they're not able to enter their land to pick up those figures. So,
okay. It's just that, if I could, Mayor, reply. One thing I did want to do is find out where you were referring to when you were speaking about the last plan.
So we are. So after page 32, there's a set of plans. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the sixth one over.
Page?
It's drawing number A07. It's not. It hasn't got a page.
It hasn't got a page. It's
No, thank you. Can you pass that over? Thank you.
It's there and there. Oh, sorry, take the microphone with me.
The thing that I'm referring to is, for example, there's no indication of what that dimension is, and there's no indication of what that dimension is. The people who are providing these plans, the proponent or whoever, I think they're quite capable of being able to be asked if they could please provide those details. I don't expect our office to do it. It should be the proponent and the applicant. Thank you.
Great. Councillor Churchill?
Another small one on a similar issue, and I'm sorry to hammer the point on this, but just on the big picture view, as in one of the photographs, for example, on page 24 of this one, if we could just have the direction marked in somewhere so that we actually know how the buildings sit in respect to each other. So if we just have north marked on something like that, we can then start to orientate the building, and especially when it comes to overshadowing and the like, we can start to work out how it's overshadowed if we've got some idea.
Sure.
Thank you.
That's possible. Thank you. Good. Very good discussion, I think, there. Some sensible improvements. And so I will put the motion. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Carried. 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulation 2005, the chairperson hereby declares that the council is no longer acting as a planning authority under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 for Section 3 of the agenda. A motion, please. Councillor Simons.
That the council no longer acts as a planning authority.
Thank you. 521. And somebody to second that motion. Councillor Breeny. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, public question time. Do we have the wireless microphone today? Oh, thank you. So if we could use the microphone and everyone can hear you clearly, that'd be great. So the first question is from Vic Pimlott. Vic's in the corner there.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, councillors and ladies and gentlemen. I would like to, before I start on my question, I would like to submit to you, Madam Mayor, from the ratepayers of Swansea, an expression of interest.
I'll come to you, Vic.
An expression of interest.
Thank you.
For the tip shop to be built at Swansea. That I put around expression of interest, and they've actually been signed, and the actual, it's been what do you call it? They got their expressions in the other column.
Sure.
Right. So I will talk on the thing now. The tip shop was devised at Swansea 6 years ago. Now the whole point is, 6 years ago, it's been designed at Swansea, and Orford wants to have a tip shop as well. Now there's a few reasons why I've come here today to express. Swansea is right in the middle of the four tips, which is more feasible than Orford. Now it's easy parking for a start. You haven't got to cross the main highway to get to Swansea, and like I said, it's more feasible at Swansea than it is at Orford.
Sure.
And that we've had a lot of discussions over the time, and one was a feasibility study which was done at Swansea 6 months ago. Now it's been 6 years now. Surely that's long enough to have a tip shop or a recycle shop. Now the whole point is, all the services are at Swansea. You got water, you got electricity all on tap. Everything is there. Less expense for the tip shop to be built at Swansea. Now, the whole point is, we're right in the middle of the four tips, so therefore it's less cartage, to me, common sense. It's less cartage to take the recyclable stuff to Swansea rather than Orford or the other places. And I just think it's pathetic in this year, in this 2001, that we're the only council that hasn't got a tip shop or a recycle shop. Yeah. I mean, we could save a lot, because the money that comes back from the tip shop could go to the council. It could go like St Helens. It goes to the hospitals and everything else. Now, like I said, and we were safe on carting to landfill, and the whole problem is, to me, the money that is spent to cart the rubbish to landfill could be halved.
Sure.
By having a tip shop.
Sure.
And that's what I like to do. I just like to point out a few things like, I'm not backing on Swansea, but it's to me it's a better place because we're right in the middle, the better location.
Yep. Sure, Vic. Thank you for what you've done. So the council, when it was the tip shop funds were approved, there was an amendment done whereby the location of the tip shop was taken out. Okay, so there is no location. So I know what you're asking for, but there is no location actually identified on the budget. So I'll commit to you that in January, the council at our workshop, we can discuss the location and we can have a proper conversation about that. And then we can make a decision on the location. But I certainly hear what you're saying, and I agree that Swansea did kick this off. Absolutely.
To me, it's just common sense.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, common sense is a thing that a lot of us don't have, you know.
So maybe I can get some contact details from you, Vic, before you leave, and I can come back to you.
Lovely, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Adrian. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm missing my clock, but I understand it's being looked after, but I don't know what time it is.
Adrian, that would be Mr. Adrian Sullivan.
And thank you, Shane, for getting back to me about the container on the entrance to Coles Bay that's got a few of the people up in arms about it. My main question, though, I heard that you had a workshop to do with the Freycinet Master Plan, and everyone in Coles Bay, and particularly around the East Coast, is very concerned and interested to know what has happened. So could you enlighten us on what you may have learned and any progress towards the master plan? And then secondly to that, how is that fitting in with the feasibility study that the government announced the other day?
Thank you, Adrian. It's a great question. The workshop that we had was a large workshop. A lot of people were here. I think every councillor was here or on the phone. So it was a really good workshop, one of the best I've ever had. The way that the plan was explained to us was excellent. It was really clear and it brought out the reasons why something was here or there, and that was also very clear on the things that they're not sure of yet, you know. So what we ended up with was the original document that was that originally went out. That's going to be modified by February and take into account community input. Some of the words will be changed amongst the document from the community input, probably better explaining things. Then that document will be going out for consultation again in Coles Bay at a time when a lot of people are around. Councillors will be involved in that. We'll be up there on the ground on that day too. We haven't got the exact detail yet of exactly how the consultation will occur, but we will certainly have input into that. Preferably I'd like to see basically a full day, people there on the ground for the full day, offering a summary of the document, say every 2 hours, so they can do a summary for the people who attend at 10 o'clock, for example, and then for the next hour and a half have a discussion with people one-on-one, and then have another a summary for the next group of people that come through the door. So we, as a council, we're really pleased. I think everyone's really pleased with the outcome of that workshop. And so it'll give everyone an opportunity to understand the plan better, where the input's gone into it, understand it better, be more engaged and have an opportunity for further feedback. So that's where that got to, and as I say, I'm really happy with that. They're also very happy with council's involvement in that, the councillors' involvement in that, and interest in that. In respect to the announcement about the state government going to fund the feasibility report and options, I think it'll all tie in together. I think, the whole thing will tie in. I mean, that's a major step, and I think it's a great step that is being undertaken there by the state government. So hopefully, you know, things, and it will take some time. Mr. Wells, we've been talking about that just earlier today. It'll take maybe 6 months or more for Taswater.
The timeframe hasn't been committed to, but it's certainly a large project, as indicated by the extent of the budget commitment. So it will take a while to work through.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the big successes of the master plan to date, that project's been brought to light and the government's listened and the government's taken action.
So I think, it's all really positive, and the community will be well informed and given every opportunity to make further comment on what's going on there. Good. Mrs. Shirley Castle. Adrian, would you mind turning that on? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For the benefit of the new councillors, I would like to repeat the question that I asked at the October meeting. My question was, has council considered buying the Buckland Cemetery and Church for our local community? This property has significant historical value and it's the first stop for the Great Eastern Drive. So I'd be pleased if some consideration could be given to this, because I think it would be a shame for it to be lost to private enterprise. Thank you.
Shirley, the answer provided that time from memory was that council would have a look at that. Is that would consider that? So yeah, that's my memory of that. Absolutely, and I'm glad you did. We've got a new council now, and nothing wrong with the old council, but we've got a new council now, so it's a good time to bring it up again, and we can have a look at that, and we can come back to you after we have some discussions about that. Okay, thank you. I know where you live, Shirley, so I'll come back to you. Mrs. That doesn't sound good. I know. Anne Held, please.
My question, I have two questions. So the first question is just on the presentation of planning and building approvals. I think it was mentioned at last meeting as well. So it used to have addresses of each planning application or building application or permit application, and that didn't happen last month and it hasn't happened this month. Is there a reason for that change?
I don't know of a reason. I did notice it changed, but council will be, and we'll flick to the acting general manager in a moment, but I've received quite a few comments on that, but council will be reviewing how the agenda looks, and that I would think that would be one thing that, obviously we'll take the feedback from people on that matter. Mr. Wells, would you like to comment on that? That's your area.
Yeah, certainly most of those, all building applications are all private. There's no public consultation process. Most of those planning application approvals are not for public exhibition either. But we reviewed what other councils were doing in that space. I think we were about the only council that listed that level of private information. So a decision was made internally to circulate that to councillors directly rather than place that information in the public record.
Okay. So I'll leave it up to you. The other one is that obviously in the light of the events this week or at the end of last week, I think I've been asked a couple of times and I haven't been able to answer, so I'm hoping that maybe the councillors or council can answer. What is the process in terms of electing the next councillor to replace, unfortunately, Mr. Kent?
Yes, so my understanding is I did ring the Tasmanian Electoral Commission, maybe yesterday or the day before, about that. It won't occur until next week, so the process is that they will contact everybody that stood for council but wasn't successful to determine who is still interested in basically putting their name in, on the table. The votes then go, the count starts at 0, so everybody's on 0, starts at 0, so it doesn't matter where you ended up at the end of the count last time, everybody starts on 0, and it's only Mr Kent's preferences that will be distributed, and then whoever comes out with the highest vote from that will be elected.
Thank you.
And sorry, and just another moment on that too, when the elections took quite a while to get through this time, like, you know, when they did the statewide, and part of that reason was because the information was put onto computer. So this time it's basically only a matter of hitting a button and the name will come out. So they don't actually have to do any physical counting. Okay. And Mr Colin Stevenson.
Thanks, Mayor. My question is, I've noticed a proliferation of signs along the highway, the Tasman Highway, Dolphin Sands Road, Louisville, etc. Could somebody explain what the procedure is for erecting signs, one in private property that the sign owner doesn't own, and two on the verges?
Sure. Thank you, Colin.
Through the Mayor, all signage requires a planning approval. All signage needs to relate to a business that's occurring on the site. So signage related to a business not on that property shouldn't be there. We're aware of a few complaints of late. We're taking action on the ones that we're aware of. It's a long-standing issue. There's lots of historical instances of signs going up without approval as well. So all I can suggest you do is, if you see a sign, get in contact with us and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. And that's all the public question time. Okay, moving on to 5.1. Sorry, on to 5, information reports. So they go from page 35 to 67. So is there any councillor with a question or comment on the reports? Deputy Mayor Woods.
Thank you, Mayor Wisby. On page 50, with regards to emergency management, I was talking with Mr Jones just recently, and he's very satisfied and very grateful for the level of support that council give the ESM. Oh no, he's not the SES. But their main concern is having new volunteers come on board, and with an ageing population, we do have an ageing population. And they find that's their main concern, and I think that's with most volunteer groups now, is that we are struggling to attract younger people. I just wanted to sort of bring that to everyone's attention with regards to the SES and other volunteer groups. And whilst I'm on that, I'd again like to congratulate and thank the volunteers from me personally over the past 12 months for their dedication to the community.
Absolutely. And I think one of the big issues there with the with our volunteers is the fact that we have so many people already volunteering. And I recall the stats about 3 years ago where we have 27% of our people volunteer. Tasmania's average is 15%, and that's the highest in the country. So, you know, 1 in 4 people are already volunteering, which is an amazing effort. So, and just on that, Deputy Mayor Woods, maybe when council sends out some information, we could send out further information on you know, various groups that are looking for volunteers as part of that, and make people aware of it. So that might be a good opportunity.
Yeah. One of the, if I may, Mayor Kent, sorry, my apologies. Mayor Wisby, is that I've been thinking about a lot, and with the resurgence of employment, especially around Tribunna with regards to Tassal, I've been thinking that maybe we should put a notice on their board out there to maybe alert them, the young people out there, to the fact of volunteering within the community. That's just a thought, but that's something we can discuss at a later date.
Sure. Further questions? Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Page 35, it's not really a question, it's just a comment. The cash investments at the end of November 2018 were 2,2226K. There is a K missing on the end of it. I would hope that Council's bank account wasn't $2,226. And on page 58, under the Prosser House celebration, it does say that I was one of the guests at that particular function. That is not accurate. Apparently a significant mix-up with the invitations in relation to that.
So that's why I didn't get one?
Me too, I believe.
Yeah,
Madam Mayor.
thank you. That was a question I actually had because of I wasn't involved.
And I'll be perfectly honest and tell you, Madam Mayor, I was quite disappointed when I read about it because I had a very long involvement with Prosser House when I was the mayor in the early 2000s, and so when I read about this 25th anniversary celebration, I was quite disappointed that I didn't actually receive an invitation, to be honest.
If I may, with regards to the invitation I received, it wasn't to Councillor Jenny Woods, it was actually to Jennifer.
Okay.
So, for whatever reason, I don't know, but that's what it was. But I actually went and represented council with regards to it.
Is that all?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
I've actually got a couple of questions. Go back. And Mr. Wells, I don't know if you can answer this. On page 38, it says the council has recently reviewed its arrangements with the alcohol and drug testing service provider. That wasn't the council. We didn't do that, did we? I didn't miss something.
No, it's just through the mayor, just an internal procedural change.
Okay. And under that there, it talks about potential new positions to be filled in the office here.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know what type of positions we're talking about?
Through the mayor, we're looking to restructure how the community's customer service is delivered.
Yeah.
So we hope to secure a community services coordinator, a senior finance role, and some other staff to ensure that we've got the right coverage.
Okay, thank you. Oh, you went last bit. Maybe you know the answer to this one, Mr. Wells. Page 64, it says details regarding the tender have become clearer in recent weeks, and that's in respect to potential fundings under catchments to coast. I was just wondering there, would council funds be required there, or have they?
Through the mayor, sorry, I don't have the answer to that one. We'll take it on notice.
And just my final point here. I read here that on page 66, development and implementation of action plans, no, forget that bit. A draft master plan for the Orford Bird Sanctuary and surrounds is being developed to ensure protection. The Crown land leases for the greater area are in train, and it is proposed to hold a workshop with the new council to discuss all of this prior to finalisation. The meeting's since been held, the workshop. The final stage of fencing around the bird sanctuary was completed due to the early arrival of the birds. So, the finalisation of the project. So, as we all know, the fence has caused a fair bit of angst in the community. A fair bit's probably underestimating the amount of angst it has caused. So, as a council, there's quite a few of us who will be meeting with concerned community members on the 15th of December at Radar Beach Car Park at 10 a.m. So, people are welcome to attend, and that's in relation to the fencing and like the proposed exclusion zones and so forth. So, that's something we're doing at the moment in respect to that. Also, Justin Foster of MAST was requested to identify safe swim areas with the change out there with the works that have occurred. I spoke by text with Mr Foster from MAST yesterday, and in the coming days he expects to have somebody up from Surf Life Saving to identify the safe swim areas. But as a council, I just don't ever want to be in this position again over a fence. So as a council, I think one of our biggest priorities at the beginning of January would be to put in place a policy that ensures that we're never here again doing what we're doing with this particular situation. So I'm just a bit nervous about some of the wording in here about finalisation and strategic and so forth. And I think we just need to be really clear on what we need to know about and what we need to approve going forward. So that's all my comments. Mr Breeney?
Can I just...
Councillor Breeney, sorry.
Can I just make a comment and underline what you've said about the Justin Foster of MAST?
Yes.
Finding out very quickly about this Surf Lifesaving report as to safe areas for swimming there, because I understand we have some sort of liability and we need to know what that liability is, because if we're told by a statutory body that it's not safe to swim there, then we have to instigate no swim areas and we have to police them and whatever. And we don't know the extent of it at the moment. And in about 2 days' time or whenever, that place is going to be crowded and they're going to be swimming and we need to do something about it post-haste. So if we could arrange for that information from Justin Foster to please ask him to provide that post-haste.
Yes, that's why I contacted him yesterday for a follow-up, because of the urgency of the matter. Yes. Thank you. Item 6. Oh, sorry, Councillor Browning. Didn't see you there.
Thank you, Mayor Wisby. Through the Mayor, I'd just like to ask about the contract street sweepers. How often are they attending the towns, and which towns are they?
I'll have to take that one on notice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't have the answer, sorry.
Okay, and another one through the Mayor to Mr Wells. Is there a schedule that the work manager has to follow up with state, I don't know if it's state roads, about the state of culverts on the Tasman Highway, cleaning of culverts?
Through the Mayor, there will be arrangements in place for Stornoway and State Growth to regularly inspect and maintain those. We'll make sure that Tony gets in touch. But if there's any in particular that you're aware of,
There are.
Tony's attention.
Okay. All right. And you're getting to get in touch with me. Yeah, okay. And through the Mayor again, the other thing is I noticed that applications withdrawn on page 55. It's got for 2018-19 as 0, and I've been watching myself online, and I can remember one being withdrawn just prior to you talking about it. So, and that was about the trees at the cemetery at Gala. So that's incorrect. So there's at least one application withdrawn.
Through the Mayor, it's just picking up applications that are withdrawn from the system completely.
Oh, okay.
So that Glengala was just withdrawn from that council meeting.
Okay, all right. Oh, so it's withdrawn completely. Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, could I just address something? You asked a question on page 64 in the Catchment to Coast about the tender, details regarding the tender. Just need to back up a little bit. NRM South, as it says in there, were unsuccessful with their first round of funding that they applied for. So they, as it says, they're still in negotiations at the moment. What has been identified is that there is the proposal, there is possibility for them to tender for funding, and the federal government are looking at Ramsar sites, which Malting Lagoon clearly is one of the best Ramsar sites in Australia. So the details regarding the tender are in relation to the tender that NRM South are developing with assistance from our NRM group here to try and get that 5-year funding proposal up.
Yeah.
Because right now NRM is not in a very good place as far as funding, I think.
Yes, I was thanks for that, Councillor Arnold. The reason for the question is, in the past, sometimes things have landed on our desk that we didn't know about, with there an obligation to match some sort of funding and going forward.
I don't believe so in this particular instance. This is about funding and Councillor Browning might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that this is about funding NRM South, a 5-year proposal that they will work with council, with our NRM to actually deliver the project. So they have to find the project for the tender that is deliverable. So,
okay, good. Thank you. Okay, no further questions. Okay, we'll move on to item 6, minutes of the Section 24 committee. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Churchill.
I actually have a motion in respect to the Recreation Ground Advisory Committee in general. I think it's appropriate to ask it at this time. The motion that I have is that the General Manager prepares and presents a detailed report of expenditure on all recreation facilities across the Glamorgan Spring Bay municipality for the January 29 meeting of Council.
So that is in relation to the $10,550 annual operating.
And I assume that's happening across other facilities, and I'd just like to know how that money is being spent, if that motion's appropriate.
Well, I can't actually see a problem with bringing up something at this point. It's a question that's been arisen from the minutes. Obviously, the point of, in this section here, it's about receiving the minutes and actually accepting any recommendations or whichever way that goes. So obviously we still need to receive and note the minutes themselves, but I can't see any issue why that request can't be put, because it's in respect to the minutes and something within those minutes.
If I may, it sounds like a more general request than just the Tribunner Section 24 committee. So I'm sure David can drag out the annual budget and expenditure and provide all of that detail. But I don't. So to me, it doesn't seem appropriate to tie it up with the Section 24 committee minutes.
I think so.
Are you happy for us to note that request?
That it be noted if we get that information detailed.
Sure. Okay, so would you like, Councillor Church, would you like to move a motion in respect to the recommendation of receiving the receives and notes on page 68?
So I can do that. The Council receives and notes the minutes of any Section 24 committees presented.
Yep, so of the Tribunner Recreation Ground Advisory Committee minutes as presented.
As presented.
Can I have somebody to second that? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Woods.
Us new councillors will eventually get the way to deal with things like that. Speaking from experience.
Any discussion? No? Well, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? It's carried.
Madam Mayor, could I just clarify something? I believe Deputy Mayor Woods seconded the motion, not Councillor Breeny.
Correct, Deputy Mayor Woods did. Yes, that's what I've got written down.
I have a vague recollection that Councillor Breeny said he wasn't going to second anything.
That just went through my mind too. You can practice on some easier ones. Okay, 7.1, Lions Club of Spring Bay. So, could I have a motion, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Council approves a grant of $800 to the Spring Bay Lions Club towards the cost of staging their annual Christmas parade in Tribunner.
Somebody to second that, please. Councillor Breeny.
Through the mayor, do we need to put 2018 in there, just to?
Probably.
Sure.
Councillor Branning, yeah.
Are you happy with
Yeah,
that?
absolutely.
Mover and seconder will put
Sorry.
2018 annual Christmas somewhere in there. Okay, open for discussion. Any comment? Okay, so I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimous. 7.2, 2019 ordinary meeting dates and times.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move that Council approves the 2019 ordinary meeting of Council dates and times as detailed in the attachment, with the amendment that the January meeting will be held on the 22nd of January and the agenda deadline amended to the 11th of January, which brings it back into our normal fourth Tuesday of the month.
Okay, could I have somebody to second that?
Yes, sir.
Deputy Mayor.
Now, Madam Mayor, I can give you my reasoning if you would like that.
I did read it, but I can't remember it.
Okay. Traditionally, the January meetings had to be held after the Australia Day holiday, because it has quite often actually landed on the Australia Day holiday. Given that this meeting date was only chosen because of that tradition, if you like, of having it after the Australia Day holiday. However, this year, our normal meeting day actually runs before the Australia Day holiday, and given that Council comes back on the 2nd of January, I think it could come back into line with the meeting procedure.
And just on that too, the AGM must be held by
15th of December.
Okay, so
yes.
the AGM must be held by the 15th.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So I think I really see no reason why we couldn't hold our January meeting on our regular fourth Tuesday of the month.
I agree. I'll just make my comment now. The 10th of December date is really early for a meeting, you know, if people want to get in development applications and so forth. And when I was in Launceston recently, a lot of the councils actually hold their AGM separate, and sometimes like on a Saturday morning, you know, actually separate to the meeting, mainly because so they've got haven't got a meeting so early in the month, and it gives people opportunities to get development applications in and so forth during that period. So I didn't know if council wished to consider that, that the December meeting, say, may be held on the 17th, but the AGM is held maybe, a week earlier or something, because the 10th of December is very early. Then we're waiting then until towards the end of January the following year before we can actually address any DAs and so forth. It's a big gap, I feel.
Yeah,
Councillor Churchill.
Mayor Wisby, I'd just like to comment on that actually in support of what you've said. I mean, it just seems to me to be not easy to manage, this short interval that we're having now between the November and the December meetings, which is basically 2 weeks. Then we're going through 7 weeks, as we will in 2020. I've worked it out if we are to work on that 10th of December date there. So we'd be going through another 7 week period to get into the fourth Tuesday in January 2020. So yes, I think that December meeting needs to be put back a week, and by way of managing the annual general meeting and getting it in before the 15th, clearly it would need to be held on another date.
Yes.
That's the only part that complicates it, but I think that is a very sensible thing to do.
Yeah. Going to agree.
Councillor Browning or Simons, do
Yeah,
you have...
I agree with that. I think that's reasonable.
So to hold the AGM on the 10th, because it has to be done by the 15th.
I believe so.
yeah, I think that was it. I just didn't get a chance to check it before I came out. And then the council meeting on that particular year, so it would have to be, I don't think anyone will want one on the 24th of December.
Really? Not a good day.
So really it would be the 17th.
Yes.
That makes it a 3-week gap and then a 6-week
And then a
gap.
6-week gap. Yeah. And altering the January date
To the 22nd.
to the 22nd. Yeah.
And so, sorry, just looking back there then, so if it was the 22nd of January, we'd have the 11th of January for the agenda. If it was the 10th of December, we would have 11 days before that, which is 29th of November.
30th.
Yes. And then the 17th of December would go back to the 6th of December as the agenda date.
Yeah.
Effectively, you're adding a meeting.
Correct. Yes. Okay.
Okay, just with the times, Mayor Wisby, I don't know if the 2 o'clock start is, it doesn't bother me, I'm the furthest away, so if it suits anyone else and we want to start at 3, that's fine with me too, it's not an issue. The driving home business, it's dark anyway, so it won't matter, so I don't know if anyone wants to kick off a little bit later than 2, but...
The conversations that were had around that was, it was about getting home without your car getting smashed up by a kangaroo, but also to try not to hit kangaroo, you know what I mean, in protection of the wildlife,
No, that's fine.
on both sides, you
Yep.
know. So that was the reason, and also they're the cold months and it's never nice heading out at night. So for the people who do come, it may give them an opportunity to attend, you know, rather than going out in the cold of night. So that was the reason why we thought about that change. Yeah, if that suits.
And that's fine with me too, as long as
Okay.
it suits everyone else.
Yeah.
It's
Further
it's
comment?
it's good. No,
No?
I think it's fine.
Well, are we clear? Is that right?
Yeah, with the amendments, you just need to ask
Oh, yes, I do.
the mover and seconder
Yes.
if they're
Um,
happy with those.
That's right behind, isn't it? So, Councillor Arnold, you're happy? Yes. And Deputy Mayor Woods?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Carried unanimous. 7.3, Southern Tasmanian Council's Authority Committee. Could I have a recommendation, please?
If I may ask the question, do we need to have the nominations, the nominated people before we put the recommendation or the motion?
We can, how about you put the motion, that's just a suggestion, put the motion and then somebody can second it and then we can talk about it.
Yep. So I'll put the motion that council endorses a Glamorgan Spring Bay representative to sit on the Waste Strategy Southern Committee and the Regional Climate Change Initiative of the STCA.
Somebody to second that? Councillor Browning? Okay. May I say something here? Well, I can, but I don't have to ask. So, I'd like this deferred to a workshop because I'm not sure that this is the best way for our council to use our resources, whether it's council laws or council staff. I did make a few phone calls on this before it came out on the agenda. So I went to the STCA meeting and I spoke to some of the mayors there who aren't involved in this. And they don't put people, but they work together as councils. So I'm just wondering if we need to do a little bit more work on this rather than just putting people on, that we consider if this is the best use of our time or staff time. And there may be other options because we don't know enough about it. And then the feedback I've got, I think there are some other options that we may wish to consider and defer it to a workshop, you know, so we can actually get some facts on it. We don't have to have anybody on there, but I think it's, yeah. Councillor Brini.
Yeah, I'd like to find out a little bit more about what's involved before I commit myself to any voting on it. Just what exactly they do, what they do for the council and the community. The fact that there's the words, yeah, well, I'd like to find out more about it before I commit to it. Thank you.
Councillor Simons?
Mayor Wisby, is the authority itself, who is in charge of the authority? What's the background?
It's the Southern Tasmanian Council's authority, so it's all, or majority of the Southern Tasmanian councils. But I'm glad you asked that question, because when I went to the last meeting, it was in Town Hall, there was so at the next meeting, so it took basically all the mayors go along, and there was the discussion as to who was going to be remaining on the Southern Tasmanian Council Association, full stop.
Mm-hmm.
Authority it is.
Oh, sorry, authority, full stop, yeah.
Mhm.
So, because of cost and best use of time, and whether or not councils could work more collaboratively together, but with better outcomes, you know, that mix together better, because you've got really big councils and you've got really small councils, and so it's not, you know, one size fits everyone. So that meeting, it will be our next meeting, where basically there'll be something put on the table as to what the benefits are and so forth. So when you add that, what I've just said, to and at that point, that's when I'll be bringing that information back to our council to have that discussion as to whether or not that's the best use of my time, you know, to be involved. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Councillor Rennie?
Can I just ask, when you're considering those and following up on that, the statement that it's a regional climate change initiative of the STCA is something that I would like to make sure that we don't just palm off our responsibilities in relation to regional climate change initiatives just because it may not be convenient.
Sure.
I think it's an important issue, but we need to know just exactly whether it's working or whether it isn't, and whether it's there's a better way to do it.
Sure. Absolutely. So I'll bring all that information back, and that's what I thought it'd be. We need, you know, yeah, that's what we're doing at the STCA anyway, is looking at all those facts, because there's a lot of new mayors around the table, and they all want to look at, you know, outcomes and benefits and so forth. So, we've got a motion on the table, and are you moving to a workshop when further information's known, or are you going to stay with the motion that's on the table?
I'd be happier, Mayor Wisby, I'd be happier to move to a workshop situation so that we can get some more information and make a more informed decision.
No, that's actually not an amendment. That's going to be a complete opposite.
It is.
It is. So,
do we need to vote on the motion? Sorry, do we need to vote on the motion? And
it's
then
not an amendment. What's that called? It's a
Foreshadowed motion.
foreshadowed motion. So that'll sit. We need to vote on the first.
If I can make a suggestion, the easiest thing to do would be to ask the mover and the seconder if they would be happy to change the wording of that to that council refers the question of a Glamorgan Spring Bay representative to sit on to a workshop. Sorry, it's that motion. The only words that are changed is, instead of endorsing, refers the question of a Glamorgan Spring Bay representative to a workshop. So at the end of it, it's just
council workshop. Okay, you're happy with that? Yeah. We're sort of flipping on the but doesn't. It's okay.
So that's Woods and Browning.
Okay,
Yes,
so
I'm happy.
Councillor Woods, you're
Yeah.
happy. Councillor Browning, you're happy.
Happy, yeah.
That sounds good.
Okay.
We'll just make it a little bit cleaner in terms of the motion, I think.
And it's a council workshop. Yes. Okay. We're good? Yes. Okay, all those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Sorry, that was a bit hard. That, like, it wasn't difficult. I mean, it was just a bit wordy because it is what it is.
Could I just request that we actually include the wording to sit on the representative for the Waste Strategy South Committee and the Regional Climate Change Initiative of the STCA is actually included in the motion.
Sure. Sorry, I can't see. No, sorry.
So it's going well.
that it's clear what we're actually taking to a. Yeah.
Yes, TCA.
Yes.
Good? Yep, good to go. 8.1, sale of council properties. A motion? Oh, the motion, yes. Councillor Bree, would you like to read
Yes.
your motion?
The motion is that council by absolute majority rescinds decision 2417 and decision 2517 and authorises the General Manager to immediately remove from sale the following council-owned properties: 2 Arnold Street, Swansea and 4 Arnold Street, Swansea.
Can you have somebody to second that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Councillor Churchill. Open for discussion. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against the motion?
Mayor Wisby, I've got a few concerns probably about that, just from an economical point of view. It's a fairly valuable piece of land by the looks of it. On top of that, I assume we're looking at turning it into a car park. There'd be development costs there as well. It's a little over 800 square metres in space. I'm not sure how many spaces that equates to, but I imagine they would be fairly expensive car spaces by the time that was done. I had a look at it today, and I've had a little bit of experience from just having 15 years in Bicheno and in the main street basically, and one thing I have noticed about people's movements, they really don't like moving off the main street to go and park. They find that very difficult. I assume it's the same in Swansea as Bicheno. We have, it's seasonal. We can never have enough parks in January, but at the end of January things generally settle down and we can park. So I suppose my comment is I just think it's probably, the money could be better used, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the previous council might have earmarked the money from the proceeds of the sale to go towards the SES building in Swansea, the new SES building in Swansea. But I'm open to, someone can defend that if they wish. But so yeah, that'd be my thoughts on it. I feel like that maybe the cost of it is a little high, and perhaps there might be other alternatives there. It's probably a fair bit for the ratepayers to bear throughout the municipality.
Sure. I'll just respond to that. So in the General Manager's report each month, he puts it was like a $2 million drain, a cash drain when, you know, the building of the SES building, I think it was, and this building, and that's why council's funds are down and had, and we were selling excess properties in an endeavour to build those cash funds back up and reduce debt. So you are correct in what you're saying. My position on this matter, I think it's a very, very valuable piece of land. So valuable that we shouldn't let it go. Because once we let the land go, I recall there's a piece of land in Swanwick, and there was talk of council buying a block of land just up from the boat ramp, and then somebody bought and built a house. Well, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Never to be, I wouldn't have thought ever to be bought back, you know, so that's where I think it is so valuable. And I've also attended probably three, you know, in recent, probably in the last 6 months, 3 of the Swansea market days, and that back area was full, including the SES. Mm-hmm. And on one of those occasions, I passed one of Swansea's older residents' and she was struggling to get to the, you know, to the actual council, to the hall, because of where she had to park, and that was just, you know, the little market happening, not actually an event. So with our ageing community, I think it's, you know, that parking and the close proximity to the shops, yes, it might be valuable, but it's, once it's sold, it's gone, and that land's just not available in Swansea. We're talking about putting people wherever we're going to put people, whether it's along at the football oval, or I don't think we're going to be reclaiming any land for parking. So I'm not sure where we can actually get land from. I think Mr. Wells, you'd agree that parking's an issue in Bicheno and Swansea area, and land is a valuable thing.
Well, yes, I guess there was an exercise that went through prior to the previous council resolving to sell the land that looked at those options, and it was deemed that this particular site and lots weren't the right site for car parking. It is off the main street, and it's not necessarily the right size and shape to make efficient use of car parking. We're sort of constrained. You'd only get 2 rows maximum.
Yep.
Half of them would be taken up by eye width. So it's not a great yield for car parking sites, and I think there are alternatives. David has suggested looking at the Ugly Duckout restaurant, which I think is now Fire and Ice restaurant. That has a very large car park that's very underutilised.
Privately owned though.
Privately owned,
Yes,
certainly.
yes.
Certainly, but on a lease basis would be something that could be considered. Still other options. The other things I would like to say was it has been on the market for some time. There hasn't been a lot of interest in the 2 vacant blocks of land. So to me, rescinding is unnecessary at this stage. There is no contract in place for them, so I don't think it's going to happen overnight. And I think if council wants to take its time and look at car parking strategies for Swansea, that could happen without this rescinding motion going through. The other thing, in more of a technical nature, when that resolution went through, the site was 2 lots, which were 2 and 4 Arnold Street. It is now 3 lots. Number 4 Arnold Street is the SES building, which is under contract for sale. So I believe that this motion needs to reflect I believe the fact that it's discussing the 2 vacant blocks of land.
Yep.
Not the SES building.
So the 2 vacant lots are now referred to as 2 Arnold. Is that what you're saying?
One is known as 2 Arnold. The newer lot that's been created doesn't have a street address yet, so it needs to refer to 2 Arnold Street and the adjoining vacant land.
Mayor Wisby, just the motion is to rescind decision 2417 and 2517, not in relation to the new blocks of land.
Yes.
It's in relation to the lots as they were.
Yes.
However, it's understood that there'll be easements for access to 14 and 12 Francis Street already on one of those lots, because it would have had to have been, and the SES building is now on another lot. If it's necessary to find out about the titles of the lots and which lots are which, it's quite possible that this motion needs to be amended accordingly, but I think the issue here is the reason why this motion is here is not because the lots haven't sold and not because we need a car park. It's because council wants time to look at the issues involved, including and not dismissing the possibility that they will be returned to sale if there's no useful source found for them. This is not to take them off the market completely and put a car park in there. This is to consider that, and the consideration of it would have to take into account things like, you know, it's obvious aisle width and size of car parking bays is very important. Access on to Arnold Street is also important. It's an undersized width of road reserve, but it's classic parking availability for people who use the town hall because there's not enough spaces on the main street. The second issue is that the parking spaces that were mentioned by the General Manager behind the Ugly Duckout or the Fire and Ice were a requirement of the planning scheme because you needed that many parking bays for restaurants with that many seats. Now, we're not going to be asking the people or telling the people who produced that they didn't really need that many car parking bays, surely. I understand the considerations of funding, budget implications related to loss of income, but the asset cash value of the land, as mentioned in the final paragraph, will remain with council anyway. So we are still in a position to be able to put them back on the market if we need to do that. The idea is to have time off the market because regardless of whether they've sold in the last 3 years, which they haven't, and there's not much interest, it could happen tomorrow and we'll lose them. We need a decision so that we can take them off the market and we can have a look at what's done and then we'll decide on what we do.
Yep.
That's the idea of this motion.
Yep. Thanks, Councillor Brennan. Any further comment?
Yeah, I'd just like
Councillor
to,
Churchill.
Mayor Wisby, I'd just like to support what Councillor Breeny's just said, but I think it's a very short-term view for us to actually let this go without at least doing the feasibility on it, and it may even be that we have to go down the path of a trial period even for a few years. But we can't let that land go if we're serious about the potential increase in population, increase in tourism. We haven't got anywhere else to move there. And we're already on a squeeze with the boats down at the boat ramp. It's only the top end of that street we're talking about. So I just think it would be in the long-term interest to at least give it a trial, and as has already been stated, it can go back on the market, and I don't see that the cost of removing it from the market at this time is significant.
Thank you. Any further comment?
I'd just like to clarify something. I understood just then that 4 Arnold Street is actually the old SES building which is under a contract of sale at the moment. Did I misunderstand that?
Correct.
That's correct, isn't it? So if we rescind that decision, we take it off the market, then we'll be in breach of a sale of contract.
No. Can I clarify?
Certainly.
From my understanding of the diagrams, the survey diagrams, the Town Hall and the SES building were originally on the same lot. Lot 2 was a rectangular lot backing the Freycinet Waters, and Lot 4 was an angular lot that butted onto that lot that was fronting onto Arnold Street. Now, that was the situation at the time that these decisions were made. I was not aware that council was made aware of any title changes or things like that in relation to the sale of the SES building. And that's why I haven't included it here, because I haven't seen any record of it in past council meetings or agendas. So what I'm thinking is that if there was a change to the number of the lot, it would be in the new survey diagram, which would cover the SES building itself, and that would be taking it or cutting it off the back of the Town Hall. The access to that was available, as far as I can tell, from Arnold Street, although you came in at a bit of an angle from Arnold Street across Lot 4. I think, I'm not sure of the actual numbers, but 2 and 4 were separate. Now, if there's been a renumbering and a what would you call it, boundary, changes to boundaries, etc., because of easements for providing access to the back of the Horny Cray, I know it's something else now, and the Freycinet Waters, then, that's fine, but we need to find out what the residual lots are, their numbers, the ones that are now vacant lots, and if possible, get them off the market. Now, whether we can do it through this motion or not, I don't know. We'll have to find out from the surveyors, but we need it straight away. We need it doing now.
But Councillor Breeny, you sent this through to the General Manager. So
I would have assumed that we would have had an answer as to that sort of thing before we got to this stage.
I'm just surprised that this complexity's come into it now, when that could have been identified because you copied me into the email, and it was please clarify this is, the correct, detailed, correct motion. So, Acting General Manager, can you tell us what the number, so you know exactly the areas that Councillor Breeny is referring to?
Yep.
Have we got a new number for that area?
Look, one of those 2 vacant lots, one is known as 2 Arnold Street. The other doesn't have a street address as of yet. It is...
So will it be 2A or something like that?
Has it got a CT?
It's got a CT number, which is 175436/100.
So that's the number 4.
That's the number for one of the vacant lots.
175436/100. The other vacant block, has that got a separate CT?
That does 175436/101.
So they are the 2 blocks we're referring to, and have got nothing to do with the SES or the right of way into the hall, correct?
That's right.
Councillor Breeny,
Is it possible to amend my motion to show that instead of reading lots 2 Arnold Street, Swansea and 4 Arnold Street, Swansea, that it reads CT, and I'll read it out if you like.
Yep.
The motion is that Council by absolute majority rescinds Decision 2417 and Decision 2517, which related to these original lots. You don't have to add that in. And authorises the General Manager to immediately remove from sale the following council-owned properties: CT 175436/100 and CT 175436/101.
Councillor Breeny, would that be now known as? Do you think it should be now known as? Because the numbers have...
Very good point.
Yes, just a...
Very good point.
Yes. Councillor Churchill, do you have any issue with...
It's fine.
That's fine. Acting General Manager, do you think that's clear
Yes.
in the intent? Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any further comment? I'll put... Thank you. So, I'll put the motion, all 4. Councillor Churchill, Breeny, Deputy Mayor Woods, myself and Councillor Browning against. Councillor Arnold and Councillor Simons. Motion's carried. 5-2. Thank you. Okay, motion tracking document on page 78. And 80. Any comment? I have a question. I'm not sure, Mr. Wells, if you know the answer. So a report was due for a solution for a toilet facility at Saltworks to be presented by the 4th of December to council at a workshop. Do you know if anything has been done in respect to that?
I know Parks and Wildlife Service are progressing with the issue.
Okay,
Whether plans have been prepared or yet, I'm not too sure, but we'll find out.
that'd be great. No further questions?
Debbie.
Councillor Browning, you need to whistle me.
Thank you, Mayor Wisby. I just, on page 79, the approval of borrowing budgets, amendments, pipelines and approval and construction through you to Mr. Wells. Is there a brief on this that we could... page 79. On the 27th of February.
Decision 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd like a report?
Yeah.
A comprehensive
Yep.
report on that?
Yeah. I'm interested to know if there's anything available, that's all.
That can be provided.
Thank you, Mr. Wells.
Thank you.
Councillor Browning, anything further? Sorry, I keep missing you. So we'll move on to questions without notice.
Yes, I have one question. Just through you, Mayor Wisby, to the Acting General Manager. The issue of that signage that has been alluded to in question time, what would be a reasonable time frame that we would expect to see those signs removed?
Through the Mayor, so the previous council formed a signage working group which made various recommendations, one of which was to approach the issue of the various unauthorised signage around the municipality. There were 6 months or so, there were some letters sent out to owners of the signs. Some have been removed, others haven't. It's really just about staff resourcing. Signage is obviously an important issue, but there are various other compliance matters as well that often have more of a safety or environmental issue that dictate, give it a greater priority, but we're working through the issue.
Right, well, through you, Mayor Wisby, that doesn't quite give me the sort of number that I'm after. I'm actually looking for a time period that the public can expect. Now, I know there's been some of these issues raised in the last short time. If they're going to continue to see these signs while we're telling them that action is being taken, what is the sort of time frame that they have to look at before they would expect these to be removed?
Well, it's not quite so black and white. It does depend on what the response of the person who put the sign up is. Some have been very willing to put their hand up, say they did wrong and remove the signs. Others are quite prepared to fight it out. And that could be, tribunal cases, proceedings that could drag on for quite a while. So, but we endeavour to address these as quickly as we can, but there's no black and white answer to that.
Councillor Arnold?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Churchill, we've been grappling with this issue of signs, illegal signs, legal signs and everything else for probably the best part of 20 years, because it is not, as Mr Wells said, not terribly black and white as to who actually has signs that are approved, who have signs that aren't approved. It's been just an ongoing thing for basically since this council has been Glamorgan Spring Bay Council.
So let's do something really fun and workshop the matter, okay? How about that?
Let's do that.
Let's do that.
It's pretty simple. If you find more money for more staff,
Well, that's
we
what I was
can
actually-
respond much quicker.
That's what I was thinking, Mr Wells. If it is a priority, then we might need to find and, reallocate some money.
For compliance.
Sorry, Keith.
Councillor Greenie?
The funding may well be from the amount of money you penalise people for doing it incorrectly.
Yeah.
And until a council is brave enough to do that, you'll find that the issue just won't go away.
Correct.
The only thing that people understand when in relation to signs, in my experience in other states and other municipalities, is that the penalty is so high that they eventually realise that the economic benefit gained from sticking up a sign is nowhere near the amount that they have to pay when they put it up incorrectly. That's going to be the solving of the problem. It'll finance the compliance officer and it'll stop people from doing it. But until you are brave enough to do that here at this table, nothing will happen.
Thanks, Mayor Wisby, and I agree with Keith, but I just did want to ask Shane a question of if you had to put a number on the illegal signs, is there a ballpark number that we're looking at? Is there 1,000 signs to have been removed? Is there 20? Is there 50?
Look, there would be around the 100 mark of fairly significant structures.
Yep.
And several hundred sandwich boards and those sorts of signs around the place.
Any further?
Quite a few.
Any further questions? No. So we can close the meeting at 6:35. The live streaming and recording of the meeting will now be switched off. And that's So we have an AGM, we can't start that early.